This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X-Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X-Zone Broadcast Network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan, and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember, 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365. And welcome back to the X-Zone, everyone. My name is Rob McConnell, coming to you from our studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Worldwide toll-free, 1-800-610-7035. Email xzone@xzoneradiotv.com. On MSN Messenger, X-Zone Radio TV at hotmail.com, and our website, www.xzoneradiotv.com. My guest this hour is John DePasquale, and as a young, tough John DePasquale knew he'd better escape his neighborhood or he would end up dead or in jail. So what did he do? Well, he stole a car only to be arrested on the Pennsylvania Turnpike. Then, while escaping through a rest stop window on the way back up to New York, he was caught again by the same cop. He is the author of a very interesting book. It's entitled... All right, do you have your pencils and paper ready here, X-Zone Nation? Okay, because I'm going to give it to you now. The Adventures of a Vagabond. His website is www.thetrueadventuresofavagabond.com. And John DePasquale, welcome to the X-Zone.
Thank you very much, Rob.
Okay, you've got one heck of a life story. Share it with our listeners.
Well, where would you like me to start? When I stole the car?
Well, yeah, isn't that when it all began, when you stole the car? Or did
it
start before that?
I didn't have much opportunity to stay in Brooklyn. Mm-hmm. It was either stay there and become part of the mafia scene, go on drugs. Mm-hmm. So I decided to move out of New York, but I didn't really start off too well. I mean, to steal a car and trying to drive to Florida wasn't the way to start off.
How old were you? How old were you when you stole the ar and drove to Florida?
I was probably about 16.
My goodness. And I understand that you were driving taxis at the age of 12.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's how I learned to drive. Stick shift, by the way.
My goodness. So did the taxi company know that you were only 12 years old?
No. What happened is that there was a huge lot, mm-hmm. and the taxi cabs used to park there. And so me and my friends at night used to go in and jump in the cars, and we used to drive our own cars. We all had keys for the cars because one key fits all the cars. So we used to just crash into each other, just go into the fence, and it caused a lot of damage.
Wow! So you were actually joyriding in the taxis that you were borrowing?
Well, we never left the lot. We'd stay in the lot, and they tried hiring a whole bunch of people. I know they hired a German once, and he used to chase us all over the lot and throw things at us. But he'd cause more damage to the cars, the taxis, than we were. So we just kind of put the place on fire, and he decided to quit, and they hired someone else. And the fellow that they hired, his name was Chico, mm-hmm. He decided rather than to fight us, he'd get one of us to work for him. And he happened to pick me, and so I started running numbers for him. He was a mechanic at the garage, and he worked nights. So, of course, I wouldn't let my friends in driving the cars while I was working.
All right, so there you were at the age of 12, joyriding taxis, and then you stole a car to move to Florida all the way from Brooklyn at the age of 16.
Never made it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now,
So I went back to Brooklyn, and then I met my first and only wife, ex-wife now, and went out with her for about a year and a half, and then all of a sudden she decided that she wanted to travel with the Playboy Bunny, and she started moving all over the United States. So
Right.
I started to, well, I guess you'd call it stalking now. I started trying to follow her all over the United States. I found out she was in Las Vegas. I went to Las Vegas. I found out she moved to L.A. I moved to L.A. And I was missing her each time I'd go to these places. I found out she was in San Francisco, went to San Francisco, just missed her there. She went to Hawaii, and so finally I said, I'm not going to Hawaii. So I went back to L.A. because I liked L.A.
all right, stand by, John. You and I have to take a 2-minute commercial break. We'll be right back. X-Zone Nation, our special guest this hour is John DePasquale. His book, True Adventures of a Vagabond. His website is www.trueadventuresofavagabond.com. And John and I will be back on the other side of this commercial break in 2 minutes as we continue from our studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. My name is Rob McConnell. Don't go away. Take a step back in time and discover old Florida cuisine at Marsh Landing Restaurant in Fellsmere. Enjoy delicacies such as frog legs, gator tail, catfish, and swamp cabbage, or enjoy the more traditional cuisine like hand-cut Angus steaks, ribs, and seafood. Join us for breakfast with a southern flair featuring sweet potato pancakes, biscuits and gravy, and much more. Planning a party? Marsh Landing's private dining room can accommodate groups from 8 to 80 people. While you're visiting, enjoy the historic pictures, artifacts, and stories that line the walls. Marsh Landing is truly a unique experience. Marsh Landing Restaurant, 44 North Broadway in historic Fellsmere, or visit marshlandingrestaurant.com. Marsh Landing, old Florida cuisine at its best.
Are you interested in the paranormal, ghosts, UFOs, or psychic phenomenon? Join me, Tim Bartley, co-host of Talking to Spirits with Lightworkers Tim and Justina, coming mid-January 2017 to the XZBN. We will channel spirits live and talk to them, revealing all kinds of amazing information. Spiritual attachments will be found and removed on the show, and so much more. To find out when you can listen to Talking to Spirits with Lightworkers Tim and Justina, visit www.xzbn.net for listeners on both sides of the veil.
And welcome back, everyone. John DePasquale is our special guest this hour on the X-Zone. His life has been a series of close calls and crazy coincidences, acts of reckless stupidity, as well as moments of valor. John served in Vietnam as well as in an elite force of narcotics agent who traveled the world. Now, let me ask you this. How did you go from a 12-year-old that was joyriding taxis to a 16-year-old who was caught for stealing a car on his way down to Florida to being an agent for the federal government?
Well, there's a lot that happened between that.
Oh, this I've got to hear. This I've got to hear.
Well, after I found my wife in San Francisco, she came back from Hawaii. She was engaged to a fella from New York who was coming up to give her the ring. And he was driving up, and he was going to be there in a couple of hours. So I had to drive from L.A. to San Francisco to try to talk her out of it, which I did. I mean, long story short, I talked her out of it. We got engaged and later got married. So we decided that when I went back, in New York, they had the draft at that time. And when we got our draft notice, none of us would ever show up. And the reason why we never showed up, and the reason that we'd give was that we didn't have any money to get on the train to go down to the induction station. So then they started to send us tokens for the train. So once you got your token, you had no choice but to go down to the induction station. Well, they sent me my token, and of course, once you go down the induction station, they say, yeah, you're okay. You're going to Vietnam, and I didn't want to go to Vietnam, just like a lot of other young kids at that time. So I went to the local mafia guy, and I said, hey, can you help me out? And he said, yeah, go down to see First Sergeant so-and-so, give him $100, tell him I sent you down there, and he'll take care of you. So I went down to see the First Sergeant at the National Guard Armory, and what he did is he enlisted me, but he predated my enlistment. So it predated my getting the token. So now I was in the National Guard. So now I had to go for Fort Dix for training, and then my wife decided to go back to Los Angeles, and that's when I decided I wanted to get a transfer. So I got a transfer back to Los Angeles at the Burbank National Guard. Well, lo and behold, while I was at the Burbank National Guard, there was word that the whole unit was going to get activated, and we were all going to Vietnam.
Oh, boy.
I said, well, I don't want to stay here. I'm going back to New York. So I got a transfer back to New York. While in New York, three months later, I found out that I was AWOL. Apparently, the transfer never went through. So I had to go back to Los Angeles, and of course, they levied us, and I was one of the first ones to go to Vietnam. So after coming back from Vietnam, this was 68, 69. I was kind of disgusted with the United States, disgusted with the war, and I just told my wife, I said, let's move to Australia. So we moved to Australia, and I was in Australia. That's where I met Dave Hackworth. I don't know if you heard of Dave Hackworth. He was one of the highest decorated in U.S. history. He was kind of like an Audie Murphy. And in fact, he was the character and Marlon Brando played in Apocalypse Now. Well, we became good friends, and we opened up a Datsun dealership, and we were good for about a year, and then all of a sudden they went into a depression, and interest rates went up to like 21%. And Dave Hackworth, he had a retirement. He was a retired colonel. Me, I didn't have anything. Well, I had an Esso gas station. I was renting bicycles out, and so it was costing me a few $1,000s a month. So I had to leave. And at that time, I was having problems with my wife. She was kind of, drinking, and she was taking pills. So what I did is I took my son and I left her there. And it took us 6 months to find me, which is not one of my better times. But from there, it's I had a 5-year break, and then I went back into the Army because I was in Washington State at the time. And after my wife found me, she said, well, you're very immature, you don't know how to keep money. And although we were never poor, we were never broke. And so I decided to go back into the Army. And when I did go back into the Army, I averaged about a grade a year because I had Vietnam experience.
Right.
So I had a combat veteran. And they said, okay, well, look, you took your test. You could be anything you want. I said, well, I was a mechanic before, and I don't want to be a mechanic again. I said, look, I was always, stealing cars. And I said, I want to be a policeman. So they said, okay, you could be a military policeman. So they made me a military policeman and sent me to Germany. So I went to Germany, and of course, I'm 6'3". I was slim, and I had a lot of medals on, and I was only like a Spec 4 at the time. So I looked good at the main gate directing traffic. So I worked the main gate quite a bit. So I got to know the chief of the narcotics section, and he asked me if I wanted to work a few times with them, and I did. So I worked undercover a while, and of course I was good. I was from Brooklyn. I knew how to, bull my way through just about any drug deal.
Right. Plus, you had the experience of, you had your life experience that included, working, having the contacts in the underworld. So you knew exactly both sides of the fence, which is great.
Oh, it was good. I mean, we made cases that we were one of the highest in Germany making cases. So they said, well, we want you to work for us full time.
Yeah.
Okay. So I work for them full time now without wearing a uniform, but now I'm still in a military policeman. They said, well, look, why don't you become an agent? I said, well, I don't have a degree. I didn't even have a high school diploma at the time, believe it or not. I said, well, but I lied. I said, well, I got a high school diploma, but I don't have a degree. I said, well, they said, go ahead and get your degree. So on my application to Central Texas College, I put down that I went to John Jay Junior High School, and I went to this, and they accepted it. And I wound up graduating from Central Texas College with a 3.8 GPA.
Wow.
Surprised the hell out of me.
Good
and
for
I never
you.
studied.
Well, you see, I disagree with you there. I believe that the School of Hard Knocks is the best school of all. That you
The
can
streets, that's where you're going to learn.
Exactly.
I met a lot of smart, book smart people.
Yeah.
I tell you, they were dumb as rocks.
Exactly. And, I fear for the kids who are in college today because it's nice to come out of college with all these degrees, but what jobs do they have to come out to? Because they don't have the street smarts. They're not flexible. They cannot adapt to situations very fast. Where a person like yourself, you had the best of both worlds.
They expect everything.
Yeah.
They want everything handed to them. I had to work for everything that I did. Nothing came easy for me.
Yeah, that's true.
So I became an agent, and when I went out, I went to they sent me to the state of Washington, and I was on probation for a year, and then after my probation, they made me I was in charge of all the sex crimes that came in, and I started specializing in that, and then they said, well, you worked narcotics before, you've been here too long in the state of Washington. I was only there 2 years. They said, we're going to be sending you to Korea. I said, well, okay, fine. So they sent me to Korea, and then I was chief of the narcotics section there.
Mm-hmm. Now, tell me, I heard stories that there were major marijuana farms in Korea. Is that true?
Oh, I could tell you a story, yeah.
Really?
Yeah, quick story. Now, we had the money and we had the equipment when we worked with the Korean, the state police, we wouldn't work with the local police because they were corrupt, but the state police, anytime we had a case involving a Korean, we always got them involved. And they'd love coming with us because we used to have helicopters. If we needed tanks, we'd get tanks. So anyway, I had an informant that said that a farmer in a small town was growing marijuana. And so I called the state police up, and they came over, and we jumped in a helicopter and flew around this village. Every farmer in this town was growing marijuana.
Oh, my
God. The whole
God.
farm. I mean, the center of the town was just a road, and all in back of the town, all the farms, were all marijuana fields. So we landed right in the middle of the village. The two Korean police got out. Of course, me, my partner, and the co-pilot were just hanging around. They had all the villages chopped down, all the marijuana, and loaded all in the middle of the town there, and they burned it.
Oh, my Lord.
All high after that. I'm surprised we were able to fly out of the village.
Oh, heavens. Talk, that must have been the world's biggest bong.
Oh, man, that was a big pile. So it's all over there.
Now
methamphetamine. We had a ship coming into Busan that was loaded with methamphetamine, and we had the Korean police seize that.
So what jurisdiction? What was your authority outside of a military establishment or off U.S. property?
None. But unless it involved an American. If it involved an American, we had unlimited jurisdiction. We go in there, we used to crash in bars, and if he was an American soldier, we could do anything.
So basically you were federal agents within the Defense Department.
Yeah. Department of the Army,
wow.
Correct.
I'll bet you a lot of people listening tonight had no idea that the Army, as well as the other branches of the armed forces, have their own law enforcement agencies within it. Everybody's heard of the military police, and we've all heard of NCIS. OSI. We've all heard about these, but to actually know that there's policing within each federal jurisdiction,
Anytime you see those shootouts on the installation like this last one, I can't think of that guy that shot up the installation. He was a soldier.
Right.
CID would investigate that. Now, we would normally get the FBI involved and do a joint investigation because either he would be prosecuted in a federal court down in the civilian community or he would be tried in the military community. I believe in his case it's going to be the military community, so CID would be the only one doing the investigation.
John, stand by. You and I have to take our Newsbreak at the bottom of the hour. X-Zone Nation, John DePasquale is our special guest. His website is trueadventuresofavagabond.com, and John and I will be back on the other side of the news. Don't go away.
This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X-Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X-Zone Broadcast Network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan, and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember, 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365. 1-800-610-7035 worldwide. Email xzone@xzoneradiotv.com. On MSN Messenger, xzoneradiotv@hotmail.com. And our website, www.xzoneradiotv.com. My guest this hour is John DePasquale. We're talking about John's book, True Adventures of a Vagabond. His website is www.trueadventuresofvagabond.com. I was wondering if you could give us an insider's view of the invasion of Panama and the capture of Manuel Noriega.
Sure. I was always designated on my officer's brief as special operations. So if something came up, what Washington would do, because our boss was Dick Cheney, what Washington would do, they would say, okay, who qualifies for this particular mission? And so I came up as one of the agents while I was in the state of Washington as qualifying. And what it was is, and you know, we never know where we're going to go until like a day or so, or sometimes hours before we're going to leave. And in this particular case, we found out that night that we were going to Panama. And but just before that, when they'd done the invasion, I wasn't part of the invasion team. The invasion team that went in were all special forces. Thing is, they got their buns kicked because, and I've been to Panama quite a few times after that. The Bay of Panama is all muck, and it's up to your waist. So when they went ahead and landed in the bay there, they were all stuck in the muck, and they were firing at them from the houses and the buildings from on land. So they really got beat up. So anyway, what happened is they chased him, and then they found out that he was hiding in a monastery. Like most of these dictators, once they're cornered, they hide in a hole, or in this case, he was in a monastery. Well, of course, they couldn't go in a monastery. So what they did is they got us, and there were several of us, and we had the monastery surrounded. And I was on a night shift. So I was playing the music, me and my partner, and the windows were open because it's hot and humid there. We weren't running the cars. And so this monk came out. He was really upset, man. He was speaking Spanish. I didn't understand, but I understood that
he was
apparently
ticked
music
off,
was going on to the compound because, they pray 100 times a day, and they like peace and quiet. So anyway, we turned the radio down. Of course, I reported to my commander, and he sent it up to command. And next thing I know, they had helicopter gunships circling the monastery with loudspeakers, playing music and Def Leppard and Wishbone Ash. And the following day, they kicked Noriega out of the monastery. So thing is, one of the monks came out, and Noriega was afraid to come out because he was afraid, number one, we were going to shoot him, or number two, that the mob that was waiting outside was going to get him and they were going to hang him because they really wanted to get him bad. But we promised him that he wouldn't be hurt, and so he came out on the other side, and that night we flew back. So I was only there a couple of nights. So, but yeah, we got him out just because I was playing the radio loud.
Tell me, what was Dick Cheney and former President Ronald Reagan like on their downtime? What were they like? You know, we've all seen them on television when the cameras are on, but when the cameras are off, what are they like?
You know, like I said, Dick Cheney was my boss, and there were only 2,000 agents, CID agents worldwide. Now, he has his own agents that travel with him, you know, anytime he travels. But anytime he travels someplace, there's always agents close by that augment the agents that are there. So anytime you see Dick Cheney or any Secretary of Defense walking around and you see a bunch of civilians around him with the earpieces, those are not Secret Service agents. Those are CID agents. CID agents take care of the Secretary of Defense. Secret Service agents take care of the president. That's why we overlapped a lot. You know, we'd help the Secret Service, and it's rare that the Secret Service would help us because we always had a lot of people. But I tell you, they were the best people that I've ever been with. Dick Cheney, I was in Las Vegas with him, and we had adjoining rooms. And he'd come out, he'd talk to us. He says, you know, he'd say, how you doing? Do you need anything? And we go to restaurants with him where he'd have meetings, and of course we were at the bar, and he'd leave his the people that he was with. He'd come over to the bar. He says, you guys okay? You need anything? Did you eat? Make sure they feed you. Make sure they send the bill over to my aide. And, you know, so he was really good. He always took care of his agents, and he loved the military. I mean, he was he protected the military from quite a bit. So,
what was Ronald Reagan like?
Well, Ronald Reagan, again, he's secured by the Secret Service, but of course, Secret Service, you know, they have to take care of the First Lady. They have to take care of a lot of other dignitaries when they come to Washington or they travel. So Ronald Reagan was going to be at his ranch that particular. I don't know if it was during a week or on a weekend. Don't make a difference, but. I was in the state of, I was in San Francisco working major fraud crimes at the time. And of course, with that special designator, they said, hey, John, you want to go over to the ranch? We need a couple of agents down there. I said, yeah, okay, fine. So I went down to a ranch in Santa Barbara. And again, I only spent a couple of nights there. But we were on the back of the house, and you know, Ronald Reagan would come out. He'd say hello, how you guys doing? Do you need anything? You know, make sure you come in anytime you need to use the bathroom. Now we had a trailer, so we never used the house facilities. And then Nancy Reagan would come out at nighttime, and it would get cold because we had mountains all around us. And she says, "You guys want coffee? I just made an apple pie. Would you like pie?" And of course we didn't turn down the apple pie, so she came out with 2 big pieces of hot apple pie, and she poured some I think tea for my friend. I had some coffee. Nicest people you'd ever want to meet. Ronald Reagan loved working on a ranch. He'd come in, he'd be all muddy, his boots, and he'd take his boots off in the back of the house, and just a down to earth guy. And I don't care what your politics are. People that met him that didn't agree with him were his friends when he left. He was really a nice man.
Tell me, in your opinion, why is the United States losing the war against drugs with Mexico?
Well, they're not letting our agents in there. You see, we're not allowed to have guns in there. I mean, we could go over the border. We could break up those cartels easy.
But if the United States went into Pakistan to get Osama bin Laden, why don't they go into Mexico?
You know why that was successful? We never told anybody we were going in.
Well,
let me tell you something. If you want any information to leak out, tell anybody that may have anything close to the operation, and you're going to blow it. Because everybody now has a secret, and everybody wants to tell that secret to somebody else. It was right that they didn't tell Afghanistan that they were going in there, and they just sent them in, and that's why that was successful.
So, what's so special about Mexico where we're actually letting them do whatever they want? The drugs are coming in, across the border. We've got National Guard down there that basically just augment the U.S. Border Patrol. They have no jurisdiction. They have no powers. So, is this...
Those borders are so porous.
Yeah.
I mean, so many different areas that you can get through that border. It's crazy. I mean, I forgot how many hundreds of miles that border is. But there's no way you could secure that unless you put a whole bunch of more monitoring equipment there. And again, it's politics. If you tell the border states, okay, go ahead and do what you need to do to secure your border, we'll go ahead and fund it. They wouldn't do that, anybody. I mean, there are so many hundreds and millions of dollars worth of pounds of drugs that are coming through there. It's crazy.
And then there's the drugs that are coming in from South America.
Well, I got a South America story for you if you want to hear it.
Sure, I'd love to.
I was working narcotics, I told you, in Korea.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I was operations officer a couple of years later in Washington State. And I met this officer, this captain, who was part of an operation called Watchtower. Now, all this information is available on the Internet. And there were hearings about the CIA. Remember when the CIA was accused of helping transport drugs?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Well, they were all hearings. Well, I was talking to this captain. It was true. It was happening. And it was happening when Noriega was there. That's one of the reasons why we went in. It wasn't because Noriega was doing drugs. It's because he failed to cooperate with us anymore. We knew he was doing drugs years before that. We were using our helicopters. And what this captain did, he was part of this operation. It was Operation Watchtower in Colombia. And there were several special forces groups that were involved in this thing. They would load up the drugs in Colombia on military, U.S. Army military aircraft, C-130s, and fly them to Panama. And then from Panama, it was easy going into the United States. And they'd fly into the United States, but not with military aircraft. We just stopped, as far as I know now. Again, I was talking to this captain. This captain said, as far as we know, it stayed in Panama. And he was working with the CIA because he was kind of liaison between the CIA and a Special Forces operation that was working down there at the time. So, but yeah, there's still a lot of drugs coming in through Panama. But Panama is very strict. You get caught with a joint in Panama, you go away for a couple of years. And they have on their border between Colombia and Panama what's called the Darien Gap. Well, I think it's a 3 or 5 mile no man's land, and Colombia wanted to build a road through there to open up, transportation from Colombia to Panama. And Panama said, no way in hell, because they know what would happen. The drugs would just pour in from over there.
A free-for-all.
Yeah, exactly. So there's still that no man's land, and you take your life into your hands when you're going over there, because they're still smuggling drugs through there, but they're doing it on horseback, and they're doing it, with people with knapsacks, and but they're not doing it with trucks.
During the time of the Vietnam War, it was evident that there was a heavy drug problem within the armed forces of the United States in Vietnam. Is there still a major problem with drugs in the armed forces today?
I don't know. I've been retired for over 10 years. I know when I was in Vietnam, and I was never a drug. My biggest drug when I was growing up in New York, and there were drugs all around me, was we used to drink cough medicine, which had codeine.
Right.
That was our big high. We never done the hard stuff.
And you never coughed.
I never coughed. I never had a cold. So when I was in Vietnam, I never smoked marijuana before. But they were selling marijuana in a pack, Marlboro pack, and what they would do is they would take the tobacco out and then fill it with marijuana. And you could get a pack of marijuana cigarettes for like $2, $3. Wow. So I bought a pack of metal, and I had one or two, and of course it didn't do anything for me, so I forgot what I did with it. But, there's a lot of drugs there. Now, at that time, I wasn't working drugs. I was a mechanic. And as my time as a mechanic, and this goes back to my experience with stealing cars and growing up in New York, I was a motor sergeant. And all our vehicles were broken down. We must have had, out of about 60, 70 vehicles that we had, maybe 10 of them were running. And the problem was when we'd order parts, I was in Pleiku, when we ordered parts from Saigon, they would never come. So I flew to Saigon because I was in a assault helicopter company. I flew to Saigon to find out why we can't get any parts. And they said, well, you just got to, stay on the list. They'll be there eventually. And they give you all sorts of crap. Well, when I was there, I saw this whole motor pool full of new vehicles, the new vehicles that we needed. So I went back and I said, okay, look, I'm going to try something. So I got one of the vehicles that were blowing up. And are you familiar with the military and the registration systems on the vehicles?
No, I'm not, but we've got to take our final break. When we come back, we'll have to finish off with this story. Exo Nation, our special guest is, you ready for this, John DePasquale. He's the author of The True Adventures of a Vagabond, his website, trueadventuresofavagabond.com, and we'll be back on the other side of this commercial break as the X Zone continues from our studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Don't go away.
19 Sergeant Central. 19 Sergeant check. Officers on the scene.
Hi, I'm Larry Lawson, host of Paranormal Stakeout. With over 36 years in law enforcement, I have learned a few things. The most important is the proper gathering and preservation of evidence is vital to putting the bad guy behind bars. It's no different in the world of paranormal investigation. Whether it's the search for the afterlife, cryptozoology, UFOs, and extraterrestrials, how we gather the evidence, preserve that evidence, and present it to a jury of our peers will make the ultimate difference in proving the existence of worlds and entities that are beyond our imagination. Join me, Larry Lawson, every week on Paranormal Stakeout when, along with my guests, we'll take a journey to prove with indisputable evidence what man has struggled to believe for centuries. Go to xzbn.net for the broadcast schedule and check me out at paranormalstakeout.com.
True healing must address 4 levels: physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual, for us to live joyful and productive lives. We tend to treat 3 of the 4, leaving the spiritual languishing. If you're tired of the same dysfunctional patterns cropping up in your life, Soul Balancing is for you. Trixie Phelps, owner and founder of Soul Balancing, is a naturally gifted energy healer trained in numerous esoteric forms, including shamanism. Trixie has created a powerful modality that safely and effectively clears your energetic field. A soul balancing session can remove interference, heal trauma, and restore your hope. Contact Trixie for a life-changing long-distance session today, www.soulbalancing.world.
You're listening to the X Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net. X Zone Nation, John DePasquale is our special guest. He is the author of The True Adventures of a Vagabond, his website, trueadventuresofavagabond.com. John, before we went to the final break, you were telling us about you went to Saigon and you're trying to find out how come you're not getting parts to the vehicles that you need to be repaired, since there were only 10 vehicles out of about 40 or 50 that were working. So you went to this place and lo and behold.
I mean, the motor pool was full of vehicles.
Right.
So the vehicles, military vehicles have a logbook, which is called a logbook. And it's a record of all the maintenance that's pulled on that particular vehicle. And also inside that logbook is deregistration for the vehicle, which reflects the registration numbers on the vehicle itself. What I did is I went back to Pleiku, to my motor pool, and I got one of the vehicles that were blown up. In this particular case, the first one was a Jeep. So what I did is I made up a stencil with the registration numbers. I took the logbook, flew back to Saigon with one of my drivers, and went to the motor pool, went in the back, and stenciled the registration number on the hood on both sides of the vehicle, and then put the bumper numbers on the bumper. We drove the vehicle up to the gate where we drive outside of this huge motor pool.
Right.
We'd show them the logbook for the one that was actually blown up. They'd look at it, they'd look at the registration number and wave us through. Voila, we had a brand new vehicle. So I gave that vehicle to the commander. I went back several more times. We wound up coming back in convoys. After about 2 months, we probably had 95% of our vehicles running. All new vehicles. They didn't know how I was doing it, but they made me battalion motor sergeant, which now there was like 150 vehicles, and half of them weren't running, and I'd done the same thing on that.
Oh, my gosh.
So needless to say, I just relocated vehicles that weren't being utilized and put them in a combat zone. And everybody had new vehicles. So I was the only one in the motor pool that had a hot water heater. I was living in a motor pool.
Tell me, what message would you like to leave the X Zone Nation with tonight, John?
Well, that's kind of hard. We're all individuals. We all make our own way in life. You just got to be positive in what you want to do. Keep a positive attitude. Try to stay away from negative people, because no matter what you want to do in life, they're going to tell you can't do it. And that's what always motivated me. When somebody told me I couldn't do something, I had to show them I could do it. Even if I failed, at least I could come back and say, hey, look, at least I tried. What did you do?
John, I want to thank you ever so much for joining us. It's been a great pleasure talking to you. And
gentlemen, anytime.
All right, sir. Take care of yourself, and thanks for being there for us, not only yourself, but all the other brave men and women of the armed forces who are out there protecting democracy and keeping us safe at night. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
X Zone Nation, my guest this hour has been John DePasquale. He is the author of The True Adventures of a Vagabond. His website, www.trueadventuresofavagabond.com. And I'll be back on the other side of this commercial break with the news at 6.5 minutes past the hour as we continue from our studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. 1-800-610-7035 worldwide toll-free. Email xzone@xzoneradiotv.com. On MSN Messenger, xzoneradiotv@hotmail.com. Our websites. For the radio show, TV show, xzoneradiotv.com. Our archives, xzonepodcast.com. And to get the latest news on the world of the paranormal and the science of parapsychology, xzonenews.com. I'll be back on the other side of the news. My name is Rob McConnell. Don't go away.